My name is Jake, and what happened to me in the winter of 2019 still keeps me awake at night. I never believed in monsters. I didn't believe in ghosts, cryptids, or the ancient legends of indigenous peoples. But after that night in the forests of northern Michigan, I can no longer be so sure. It all began at the end of December. I'd been keen on hunting for a long time, and often headed into the woods for a few days. That year, I decided to spend the weekend in an old hunting lodge, which was about 20 kilometers from the nearest road. It was a quiet place, too quiet. All around there was nothing but snow, pine trees, and frozen lakes. The perfect spot for someone wanting to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. The first day went perfectly. I arrived in the morning, lit the stove, and set off to explore the surroundings. But by evening, I'd started to notice something strange. The forest seemed empty, so empty that it was striking. I saw no birds, no squirrels, no deer, nothing. It was as if all living creatures had abandoned the place. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now I realize I should have been on my guard right then and there. Night fell. A blizzard was raging outside the windows. I was sitting by the stove reading a book when I heard the first sound. Thump, thump, thump. It was as if someone were tapping against the outside wall of the cottage. I decided it must be a tree branch. But the sound came again. Thump, 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 this time much louder. I went to the window and looked out. No one was there, just snow and darkness. So thick that the lantern only lit up a few meters ahead. Returning to my armchair, I tried to put the incident out of my mind. However, about an hour later, I heard something far worse. Someone had said my name, quietly, almost in a whisper.
Jake.
I froze. At first, I thought I'd misheard it, but then the voice repeated itself.
Jake.
It was coming from the woods, right behind the house. A shiver instantly ran through my whole body, because the voice was familiar. It was my brother's voice. The problem was that my brother was in another state, more than 1,000 kilometers away from me. I grabbed my torch and my gun. I walked over to the door. I opened it. There was no one outside, but I could clearly hear someone moving amongst the trees. Slowly, leisurely. The crunch of snow came from the right, then the left, as if someone were deliberately circling the house. I closed the door and bolted it. I hardly slept all night, and in the morning I decided to check for tracks. What I saw made me regret my decision. There really were footprints around the house, only they didn't belong to a human or an animal. They looked like human footprints, but they were far too big, far too long. The distance between each step was nearly 2 meters. It was as if the creature that had left them was incredibly tall. The tracks led into the forest, and common sense told me to stay at home. But my curiosity got the better of me. I followed them. At first, everything looked normal. The tracks wound their way between the trees, leading deeper and deeper into the thicket. After half an hour's walk, I noticed that it had become far too quiet again. Not a single sound, just my own footsteps. And then I heard a voice. This time it was right nearby.
Jake.
I spun round sharply. No one was there. But the voice had sounded so close, as if someone were standing right behind me. I shone my torch between the trees. And that's when I saw it. A tall figure, very tall. It was standing about 50 meters away from me, motionless. I couldn't make out any details. Just a silhouette, a superhumanly tall silhouette. For a few seconds, we simply stared at each other. And then the figure vanished. It didn't run away. It didn't hide. It simply vanished behind the trees. That was when I decided to turn back. But it was already too late. They were following me. Every time I sped up, the footsteps sped up too. When I stopped, they stopped, as if someone was playing a game with me. I walked faster and faster. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. And then my brother's voice rang out again. Only now there was something wrong with it. The words were too drawn out. The intonation was too unnatural. as if someone were trying to imitate a human, having never heard human speech before. At that moment, I broke into a run. I didn't care how silly it looked. My instincts were literally screaming at me to run. I raced through the snow without looking back, but I could still hear footsteps behind me. They were faster, much faster. When a small cottage finally came into view ahead, I felt a sense of relief, which lasted only a few seconds, because someone was already standing by the cottage. A tall, dark figure. She was looking straight at me. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its gaze. And then, it slowly turned its head and smiled. I swear it was the most terrifying smile I'd ever seen. I rushed into the house, slammed the door shut, and sat there with my gun in my hands until dawn. I heard neither footsteps nor voices again. In the morning, I packed my things and left, for good. Later, a local ranger told me about an old legend, about a creature that can mimic human voices, about a creature that lures people into the woods, about the Wendigo. At the time, I just laughed. But before I left, the ranger said one thing that I still remember to this day. He looked me straight in the eye and asked,
"When you saw that creature, was it far away?"
I replied that it was about 50 meters away. And then he turned pale.
"No," he said. "It wasn't it you saw."
"What do you mean, not it?" He was silent for a long time. And then he replied quietly,
"If the Wendigo allows you to see it, it means the real creature is much closer."
7 years have passed since then. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up to the same sound. A quiet whisper outside the window. A whisper that says my name. And every time, I remember that night. Because part of me is still afraid to look outside and see that it has finally found me.